Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
Baseball is back, and the first pitch is on Netflix. The New York Yankees, led by seven-time All-Star Aaron Judge, head to the San Francisco Bay to take on Rafael Devers' San Francisco Giants. This season kicks off with one exclusive opening night game. Watch MLB Opening Night, the New York Yankees versus the San Francisco Giants, live on Netflix. Tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn, a unique blend of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you by DSC, Conservation, Education, and Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, award-winning revolvers and pistols. Stealth Vision, high-tech, precision-driven equipment for today's modern hunter. Red 55 Winery, signature wines from Emmy Award-winning country artist Miranda Lambert, owned by Rick and Beverly Lambert. And the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, home of some of the finest hunting in North America. Now, here's Larry.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the DSC Campfire, and I am so privileged this morning to have Mr. John Landgraf with me. John lives out in far western Texas, kind of the middle of Odessa area, and he and I have gotten to be friends over the years, and we have just gotten back from our fourth hunt to a fourth nation, or actually a third hunt, I guess, to a fourth nation. John, welcome to the Campfire, and tell people a little bit where we were this time.
Well, thank you, Larry, for having me. This is pretty exciting. I enjoyed hunting with you, and we just got back from the vampire hunt in England. We were hunting the vampire deer, Chinese water deer, and Reeves muntjacs in England, and what an adventure that was, and just an absolutely beautiful and interesting country for sure.
You know, it really was. Like you, I know you did a little bit of research as well, too. We learned all we could about the Chinese water deer, and then also we both have, thankfully, friends who had hunted them in the past, and so I relied very heavily on some of them. But these are really small deer, aren't they, compared to what we're used to here in the U.S.?
Oh yeah. I think the Chinese water deer, if you get a 30-pounder, that's a big one. They're very small, and muntjacs not much larger, maybe a little bit longer legs, but body wise probably not much larger either.
You know, that's one of the things that amazed me was the length of the legs, particularly like on the Chinese water deer. Now, one of the things I did notice, and with that we have to preface to say that they like marshy type country. They like places that are wet, and they're originally, I think, from Korea and in southern part of China. So, but they live kind of in the grasslands. One of the things I noticed is that particularly on the one that you shot, that his hooves were a little bit longer, not as long as kind of like maybe a Sitatunga that lives in the marsh in Africa, but they were somewhat elongated, weren't they?
They certainly were. In fact, you pointed that out, and I was interested to see that it did kind of remind me of the Sitatunga hoof, in that the front was much longer and splayed out a little bit, it seemed like.
And that's got to be an adaptation for them to get around in some of that wet country. And we need to also say that there's probably not a whole lot left in their native country, but they were introduced into England back in the late 1800s, I think, and have expanded to quite a population. The area that we hunted, describe people what it kind of looked like as far as you, from your perspective.
Well, it was a short grass marsh, very wet, and then there were taller reeds dispersed throughout that, and actually pretty good cover for them because they were not much taller than those reeds, and so you had to hunt and pick and look through that. I will tell you the one thing I did notice: no matter what shape their hooves, they're quite quick when they take off. One time we saw several, and it looked kind of like a covey of quail breaking for a minute. They just scattered everywhere. But we had a wonderful gamekeeper. Adam knew his business, and he could spot them quite a ways away, and was very proficient in his stalks, I thought, also.
Yes, sir. Of course, we were hunting with Scandinavian Pro Hunters with that hunt that was set up for us by Patty Canoe with the Global Sportsman based out of San Antonio. And but they always in the past, we've hunted with them the previous year for moose in I guess it was Sweden, and then Finland we hunted for white-tailed deer. But they have a way of coming up with the best estates possible. And this is open country, but Adam Gage was the gameskeeper and did an absolutely fantastic job in terms of the wildlife that they have on that property and in terms of habitat. But he too had an eye for those things, because it was like trying to maybe it almost be like hunting for sharp-eared grass jackrabbits in West Texas, where we'd had a lot of rain, where there was grass on the ground, kind of thing, because you could just sometimes just barely see the tips of their ears.
That's right. And, it's amazing to me that they were all, this was totally free-range animals, too.
Yes, sir.
This was like their native home, and they've adapted so well. And I thought, and doing a little bit of that research, that they can have up to 8 individuals. It's almost like having a litter of pups. It's just,
absolutely.
And so I'm sure that's what's helped them adapt to that country and to spread as much as they have. But that was just fascinating to me, because, we think of 1 or 2 fawns. When you see twin fawns, that's a big day sometimes.
Oh, it is, yes, sir. And we did not see any little ones, but I understand, too, they kind of breed pretty much, throughout the year. Now, describe the males to someone that may have never seen, and kind of close your eyes, and everybody that's listening, and to kind of imagine what John's going to tell you about what they look like.
They have a little cat-like face, which kind of is startling to begin with. Their face doesn't look like what we conventionally think of a deer, but no horns, pretty large ears, but then fangs. Literally fangs coming out of their upper jaw, and it's their canine teeth. But they are 3 inches is a monster, and anything over 2 inches usually projects below the bottom jaw, which is what you're looking for. And we were fortunate to find some in that category, but just really a very unique looking animal from a deer standpoint, for certain.
And I remember Adam, when of course, he was using a really good spotting scope. We were using binos to try to just, spot them. And then he would set up the spotting scope, and he said, let me look at them, I want to make sure that they're mature. And he was using what you just said with that pointed upper canine, being below the bottom of the jawline. And then also, apparently they're vicious fighters, because he said you want to look for where you can for those that have a ripped ear or, or split ear kind of thing. And that usually tells them that they're mature. But his knowledge, we looked at a lot of them, and his knowledge just, man, it shined through, I'll tell you, as far as I was concerned.
Well, and he also was looking for coloration variation in the tooth.
Oh, yes.
And he said if it's solid white or not much color variation, it's usually a younger animal. And he was looking for some dark streaks and dark spots in there that also was an age indicator. And of course, that's we really noticed that when we had one on the ground, but he was able to see that through his spotting scope. And I thought that was kind of like ivory on an elephant.
Right. Yes, sir.
Gets some streaks and colors in it, and he brought that out to us also.
We would spot one, or he would spot one, and next thing you know, the spotting scope go up, and he'd go, "Oh, well, not quite the one." And we did see one of them that was of interest to me, but of course, we didn't go after it for a good reason. He said that there was one that we saw as well too, that had extremely long tooth on one side, or fang on one side, but the other side was missing apparently from fighting. So. That was one of the things he was looking for as well too. But apparently that one, he said, had, from what we could see, his ears were all tattered, and he also mentioned that they have a tendency to kind of circle a little bit when they fight, and you can tell whether one is a right-handed one or a left-handed one based upon what side the ears were split on, kind of thing. So,
I thought that was most interesting. A right or left tooth.
The one that you were able to take, tell us a little bit about that one, because we had not been hunting a very long time, but we'd been looking over several of them before we finally spotted those from the one that which you hunted from, or the one that you took.
Well, as you said, we had seen quite a few, and were trying to narrow it down and get one that had all of the components that you look for. Long teeth on each side, a little color variation to show there's some age, a little bit of tatter on the ears, and we were able to see one, and he was hiding in some of that taller grass. We were able to make a stalk. We got in, I think, we're probably about 120 yards, Larry, something like that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And I was able to get on the sticks, practice shooting on sticks all the time, because we knew that was probably going to be how we would have to do. There are no big trees in those marshes. It's just literally knee-high type grasses and very short grass in between. But anyway, we were able to get within about 120 yards, and all my training at FTW, I think, helps me learn to shoot in any type of situation or circumstance, and I was able to get a good shot on him, and he went right down.
He did go right down. We were using borrowed rifles. Now, you can take a rifle into England, but it is a pain in a lot of parts of the body to do so because of all the permits. So we were using a borrowed rifle. Do you remember what round or caliber you were using?
Yes, it was a Tikka 223, which is a very, small, sweet but accurate at short distances. And this one proved to be, we sighted it in prior to hunting, and I think I shot one time, and it was about 1.5 inches high at 100 yards, straight down the middle. So he called it, said that's where it was supposed to be sighted in. So we were great, and I since we were right at that 100 yards, I was maybe shooting about 1/2 inch lower than where I thought the bullet ought to go, or aiming, and it went, it was a great rifle, great setup, a good Swarovski scope, and great equipment that they had. I was very impressed with their rifles, accuracy, and the quality of all that. That was certainly a comfort, as you and I have experienced sometimes when you use somebody else's rifle. You can run into a bit of a problem, as we'd say in West Texas.
John and I are both laughing here because when we hunted in Baja, Mexico, for their version of a mule deer or the black-tailed deer, our permits did not arrive on time, so we were using different rifles, if you will, and John thankfully ended up with one that shot, and I ended up with one that was almost as old as I am, I think, and I think some of the ammo, and I noticed that every time that I shot, we were trying to make sure it was somewhere close to being sighted in. I noticed that every round I shot was a different bullet style, a different bullet weight, and made by a different company. So that was not the case this time. I think the rifle that you had that you used, I think, actually was a Tikka, if I recall correctly. I couldn't remember whether it was 222 or 223 rather. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So once you got the animal on the ground and we got a good look at it, what was your impression then? I mean, I know you were thrilled because I was thrilled for you as well too.
I was absolutely thrilled. You know, that's a unique deer species, and I've just enjoyed hunting deer of all kinds, makes and models, and this was a very unique animal. I mean, no antlers at all, not a speck of anything on the head that would give you any indication that they've ever had any throughout their evolution. But to have those long, beautiful fangs and to be as small and as quick as they are was also very interesting to me. And the fur was short, kind of a straw golden color, just
yes,
a real pretty animal. And the ears were kind of big and rounded, and had a tatter or two on one of them. And I guess he must have been his right ear had some
yes, sir.
tatters, so he was a right fanged deer, I suppose. Both his fangs had, and I know that's not the right term, it's their teeth, but both of his fangs did have some discoloration in them, and they were well below the bottom jaw. So I was very happy that this was certainly a trophy Chinese water deer from merry old England, and happy to be there and happy to share that with you, Larry. And I know you were very successful right after that or the next day.
I was. One of the things, too, that you commented on when we actually finally got hands on the animal is that you mentioned that the hair was a different texture than what you expected. And I think you said it reminded you somewhat of a cliff springer in Africa.
It did. It was kind of that thick, hollow feeling hair, you know, that the cliff springers have. And this seemed to have something more like that than you'd think of a whitetail or a mule deer or literally a moose or any other deer that I've hunted. And it seemed to be like that cliff springer. I don't know if that was provide some buoyancy because they're in the marshy
yes.
areas, or why that hair's developed like that. But that was very interesting.
You know what? That probably is a genetic adaptation that has occurred because they do spend time in, around water and in water, and that would add certainly to the buoyancy. Interesting.
Right.
Yes, sir. With years, I was fortunate. I trailed along behind it with a little TV camera, a little movie camera, and people are going to be able to actually see your hunt on our A Sportsman's Life that's on Carbon TV, but also on the YouTube of the same name kind of thing. So that'll probably be out by the time that this podcast airs. But like you, it was such a pleasure to spend time with you. I so enjoy your company and your knowledge, and your listening to the stories of you both, you and I are graduated from Texas A&M. I just a little bit right before you, but we know so many of the same people and can tell stories on them, and I'm sure they're telling stories on us as well, too, whenever they get together, knowing a couple of our friends.
That's probably true.
Yeah, but it was such a pleasure to be there with you when you took that animal, and I want to talk about mine a little bit, but also England was so very interesting. It was a little bit. I'd been there before to hunt roe deer in a different area a bunch of years ago, and it was much more rolling, as we tended to see a little bit later on in the trip. We had two other gentlemen with us, one from Delaware and one from Florida, and they too both took extremely nice Chinese water deer. And then finally, I developed a little bit of a stomach problem, if you will, but I probably picked up on the plane or something. And So I was the last one to take one, but, we too, hunting with Adam Gage, went for a rather long walk and, finally passed up several of them and then finally spotted one at a long distance and were able to stalk them. To me, it was kind of like hunting pronghorn antelope in a way where it's green. And of course you're looking for animals that are considerably smaller, but I can highly, highly recommend that hunt, as I know you can, of anybody that's interested, particularly in a little bit of a different kind of deer and one that doesn't have antlers. And if you got a office or a trophy room that doesn't have a whole lot more space on the wall for mounts, they're small and they fit in very nicely, I think, almost anywhere. So
I think you're exactly right. And I would tell you, it was a really unique opportunity. I have traveled and have been to the big cities of England and Scotland and, go to London and Edinburgh and Glasgow and that kind of thing. And I'd never really spent much time, I guess I'm embarrassed to say, in the English countryside. But to me, that was something that was also made this such a unique and interesting trip. Little narrow roads, hedgerows on both sides. We drove, 3 hours north of London?
Yes, sir.
And it was just delightful. Old buildings, obviously, everywhere. I think the inn that we stayed in, Deer Camp, was built in 1540. But
yes, sir.
Obviously been updated, has wonderful amenities inside, but the stones and the houses next door and everything were all just old. I mean, the stones building was built out was the original construction on the outside. So it was quite a fascinating and interesting countryside and very warm and engaging people in the little town that we visited. And it was just a very interesting perspective and just very unique deer hunt for a very unique deer animal.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned, the hedgerows, and, we're used to 5-strand barbed wire fences here in Texas. You know what? I don't recall seeing a wire fence throughout most of our trip. It was always those very dense hedges that kind of separated properties or separated, the pasture from the road itself.
Yes. And then Adam was telling us that I thought was interesting. There's a way that you can trim those hedges and bend them over so that you thicken up the whole hedgerow from the ground up. And it also is used as habitat for their bird population, for their pheasants and grouse. And I thought that was quite interesting. He said there's actually a government program that encourages all the farmers to do that to help protect the native wildlife. And I thought that was an interesting perspective on that. And of course, I think he's in charge of all the game on that large estate, whether it be birds or deer or what it might be.
I noticed there, and I know you did too, there was not a lack of pheasants.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, big bright colored cocks, and then the hens, and you just saw them walking across the roads or in the fields and everything. Everywhere there were pheasants, and of course that's a English pastime, I think, is the shooting of the pheasants. So there certainly are plenty in that area.
Pretty good. Sound like a pretty good pastime and sound like a very target-rich environment from everything that we saw there. Let's switch a little bit. We went from there. We were hunting primarily flatlands, very little forest of any kind, very few trees, lots of tall reeds occasionally here and there. But switch from that. Now, before we get into the Muntjac, you being someone who absolutely loves red stag hunting, and I do too. Not quite to the extent I think that you do, but you had an opportunity to hunt an English red stag while you were there too.
I did, and you're right. Larry. I've pursued red stag in lots of places, been very fortunate to be able to do that, but I'd never been able to pursue, or had not, the English red stag. And we went to an estate, a large estate about another hour further north.
Yes, sir.
And lovely countryside drive, just, beautiful countryside, small farms and villages along the way. But able to get in there, and James Ellis was the gamekeeper of this large estate, and he's been there for 35 years managing the wildlife on that estate, which I tell you, I think he knows every animal in there by name.
I think he does almost. Too. Just amazing.
And I think he said there, between the red stag, the fallow deer, the cyca deer, they had over 1,000 animals, and it's a huge, beautiful. It looked like it's manicured grounds, but it's not. It is. They're not allowed to fertilize or mow or plow or anything to keep it in a completely natural state. But it's just a beautiful place, and they had some beautiful red stags. And I think you were in the forest on your Muntjac hunt with Sophia, and we were able to see a small herd of red stags and made a stalk, and able to get close. And I picked out one that I thought was just absolutely beautiful, symmetrical, and a classic 20-point English red stag, and was able to take him using a different rifle. Was using a 6.5 Creedmoor on that particular hunt with some good Hornady ammunition, and he was dispatched quite nicely, and I was very happy with that. And James told me, and obviously we can't bring that kind of meat back to Texas with us.
Unfortunately.
And he said it's all sold commercially as part of their estate management program. So somebody's having a red stag steak in London that was taken by a good old boy from West Texas.
I love it. And John, that stag that you took, if I were to sit down and draw what to me is the classic stag that I would love to put on my wall and or just love to see, that's the one you took. It was a symmetrical 10 by 10, had fabulous crowns, just as the most beautiful red stag. I've looked at a lot of red stags too, not as many as you have, but I've taken a fair number of them. But to me, if I could have drawn the animal that I wanted to shoot for a red stag, you took it. I mean, that thing was just, you talk about absolutely classy and classic. That was the one.
Yes.
I've got a picture of it sitting here in front of me right now, and I'm going, if ever again I get a chance to shoot a red stag, that's the one I want to shoot.
Well, and Larry, he had some that were larger, but this one, yes, it was truly a classic red stag, and long mane beams, and then just beautiful crown points.
Gosh, yes, sir.
And he was just what the doctor ordered, and I was real pleased with him. Very, very, very fortunate to be able to get there and get that one.
I think you made the absolutely right choice. And you're right. While you were out hunting your stag, James dropped Sophia and me off in an area, in a forested area, and said, he told us there was a high seat. Well, we started walking kind of in that direction, and I had not paid attention to the fact that he had told Sophia there was a high seat back there just a little bit beyond where we were. And I got to looking around. I go, man, this looks good right here. I can see over here, underneath the forest, there's the dense thicket over here, look like laurel, and then, some evergreen trees and some deciduous trees and green. And I said, let's just sit down here by this tree right here. So we sat down, and we'd been there probably about 20, 30 minutes or something, and I saw this Muntjac, which was really the first live Muntjac buck that I had really seen. We'd seen a couple of them as we were driving to the area at a distance, but he came through there and he kind of disappeared, and I switched around and I kept thinking he's going to come out to the left a little bit farther, and all of a sudden I got a nudge from Sophia. She says, Larry's right there to the right. So I switched around and was able to take him. And two, we're talking about vampire deer. These truly are vampire deer as far as I'm concerned, or maybe not quite to the extent of the Chinese water deer. But the Muntjac is very interesting in that it does have elongated canines or fangs, if you will, and then it has antlers too, although not very long or very heavy or very massive, because we're talking about a deer that weighs about 30 pounds. And I was able to dispatch that one, and that's both those, taking that Chinese water deer and then that Muntjac. I'll tell you what, John, that was an absolute dream come true that finally came to fruition after about 40 years of wanting to do it. So thank you.
No, I'm just happy to hunt with you, Larry. You're always a interesting fella, and they call you Mr. Whitetail, but I think you know about all the deer of all these places and all the world. So you're quite knowledgeable, and you're an encyclopedia of all deer species. But yeah, it was real interesting. And when we got back and took photographs of it, I was looking at it, and the antlers, I used the old surveyor's trick, a dollar bill, 6 inches, and I pulled out a dollar bill. And lo and behold, you were over 3 inches in length on those antlers, and they were telling us anything over 2 inches is a trophy. So there's quite a bit of extra trophy that you were able to acquire, and I was real happy for you. And what a beautiful animal. And they almost have a little white tail like a white-tailed deer, but it's almost shaped like a cottontail's tail. It's kind of round white tail. Very, very interesting white rump.
And they do. I noticed we saw a couple of females earlier when I was hunting with Stefan in another area. When they ran, they kind of carried their tail upwards, like you say, a little bit more like a cottontail than a whitetail. But underneath of their tail is just as white as it could be.
Just as white as it can be, yes. And their hooves don't have any of that splay on them, and they are very, very tiny, probably not much bigger than a nickel or something of that size. I mean, just real tiny little hooves. But I think that gives them the ability to sneak around in those forests and the brambles and the thick stuff that they like, underneath all those big, beautiful trees that they have.
And they do. They apparently they will go to the forest edge, I guess, and to the edge of the fields. But I think they're primarily a more, an animal of the forest. And of course, they're omnivores, so they eat just about any and everything that literally, figuratively, I guess, and literally that they can sink those canine teeth into. So they can be a little bit of a invasive species and a little bit destructive in some of these areas where their populations, because I understand they have a unique reproduction system to where when the fawn is born, almost immediately there's another one being farmed. So they can produce quite a few of them, and I think they're something like 120, 160 days, I think, is their gestation period. So literally, I guess they can have like 2 fawns a year, and apparently they do very, very well in terms of numbers, and apparently too they're spreading throughout different parts of England now as well, or maybe have been doing that for a while.
Well, we saw quite a few in a short period of time that we were there, so there's certainly not a lack of the Muntjac either. I mean, and of course, totally different environment from the Chinese water deer, but they were all over that estate in those forested areas. I sat in a high seat for a few hours, and I saw 3 little bitty short antlers on the 2 males that came sneaking through, and then the female. But it was interesting just sitting there and observing them. No intent to shoot any of those, but just to be able to watch them sneak through, and it's quite interesting.
Now, I've heard they're also sometimes called the barking deer, and I asked James about that, and I said, what do they sound like? He says, well, a lot of times you hear them bark when they're alarmed, and he says it kind of sounds like a fox, which is kind of a short, gruff kind of bark. But interesting little animals in so many different ways. They have also on their foreheads, they have some rather large glands that I think they use for marking territory and those kind of things as well. And apparently, too, when they fight, what I meant to mention about your Chinese water deer in particular, the backside of his teeth were really sharp. And the little Muntjac that I shot, the backside of his teeth were really sharp rather. And two, the one that I shot, his ear was ripped from the base all the way to the tip of it, and it looked like it hadn't happened all that long ago. So evidently when they fight, they use those quite effectively.
They must, but that one of yours was literally ripped the entire length of the ear, and it was fresh. It had some dried blood, and it had just begun to scab over. So, yeah, it obviously was very fresh. And I don't know whether that's during the rut time of the year or what, but, since they can have such a short gestation period, I suppose that rut moves around various times during the year.
It probably does, and they may be, I did not ask, but they may be, our whitetail and mule deer, elk, and animals here, they produce viable sperm only during the time basically when they're in hard antler, whereas like the axis deer and some of the more temperate type deer can produce viable sperm year round. So I strongly suspect they're somewhat, since they're kind of from the same basic longitude, very likely they can and do breed year round, whether they're in hard antler or not. But interesting animals in so many different ways. Like I said, the size, the fact that they have the fangs, if you will, and then the antlers, and some of the antlers will actually have a very short little brow tine right at the very base. Mine happened to have a brow tine on one side and not on the other. Now, once we got mine down, we had gone in while you were sitting in the high seat. We had gone into James's larder to where he brought your red stag and the Muntjac that I had taken, and we left there headed back to pick you up. And in the process of that, we were there to pick you up right about noon, and it looked like those animals were really moving right down, right in the middle part of the day. And I think part of that was the fact that we had a full moon pretty much the night before. But we picked you up and were able to find a really nice Muntjac for you as well too. I mean, it had a lot of length. And tell us a little bit about that hunt.
Well, we were very fortunate, or y'all were very fortunate to happen to spot that, and I'm glad you did. Picked me up from the high seat and headed back over to that wooded area that was kind of, it was a very large estate, as we'd said before, but they had, they kept these dense wooded areas all throughout the estate, through those beautiful grounds. And y'all had spotted one in there, and so we go back over into that area and we circle around and look and finally find him. I think you spotted him, and everybody said, well, golly, he can see a whole lot more than just whitetail. But they were giving you a hard time about that. But fortunately, you spotted him, and James and I made a stalk, and one more time that beautiful 6.5 Creedmoor worked, and Hornady ammo, just everything worked perfectly. I'm ecstatic, and my Muntjac was, I think, very similar to yours as far as length. It was absolutely very, very long, about the same, close to that same 3-inch number, which was wonderful. Had one good fang on one side and a broken fang on the other side, but his antlers were perfectly acceptable, and I'm very pleased with him. One thing I did notice about them, they have a beautiful hair and skin on them, and it's very dark. And I think that, helps them hide in the shadows and the stuff in the dense forest where they they are, but they're a very beautiful skin, I thought.
They really were, and I recall them being considerably finer textured hair than what the Chinese water deer was too, and they're too kind of from some of the same, more or less basic area. Just the water deer being from a more open marshy type country, and the Muntjac being from more brushy and tall tree type country. But you've got to be right about that. That's the reason they have that coloration, because they will blend in very well in the shadows in those situations.
You bet. And it was just absolutely a delightful hunt, and James knows that estate backwards and forwards and inside and out, and it was just a delight to be with him and share his knowledge of the history of that place. Was, I thought, very interesting too, Larry.
It really was. They were talking about when they took it over that a lot of the old homes actually had trees growing through the windows and things, and they've gone in and totally replenished or refurbished, I guess, those homes and refinished those homes, and now it's somewhat of a destination, or it is a destination for a lot of different people as well too, not just from a hunting perspective, but from a tourist perspective as well.
Right, and I know you got some great photographs, and we were sensitive to their interest in us doing that, but we did get wonderful photographs of our animals and
yes, sir,
in the countryside. So that was.
I've got to ask you about one more thing. We went. Okay. Both you and I have been known to enjoy a drink after a hunt's over with. We went to a really interesting little pub on the estate. And do you remember the antlers that they had over the fireplace?
Not only do I remember them, I took several pictures. They literally are antlers of an ancient Irish stag. And Larry, don't let me exaggerate to your listeners here, but they had to be 8 feet wide. And I don't know how much, 100 pounds or more of antlers. And we were commenting, looking at the skull, how thick that skull must be to be able to support antlers like that. I was just overly impressed. I'd seen pictures of those ancient Irish stags before, but they look more like moose antlers than stag antlers. They're much thicker, have broader beams and everything, but just impressive. And they I think I don't know how long he said they'd had them. The new owner had purchased them, and they were the highlight of this English pub. And we did go by and thank our gamekeeper, and I think bought him a couple of rounds of Guinness, and we had a nice visit there. And Sophia joined us, and we just had a great time reminiscing over a wonderful day and good old English countryside. And
absolutely,
I thought that was a very typical English pub from all the TVs and movies and things. That was exactly what you would think an English pub would look like.
Absolutely. That was such great fun. The only thing I'll comment about that Irish stag is I think you underestimated the spread. I got a feeling it was closer to 10 feet than it was 8 feet. But
okay.
I say that because one of the times when I went to the restroom, I paced on the way back. I paced from one end of that fireplace to the other end of the fireplace, and it was right at 10 feet. And truly a unique animal. I can only imagine what it would have been like to have seen one of those in real life, many years ago. But you're right. That entire setting, the people there that we were there with, and the people from there, and sitting in that pub, and then also we visited another one just a little bit to grab a bite to eat on another day. Very typical of what I would have dreamed of or thought of being an English pub, and very, very gracious people, very, very friendly all the way through. And of course, I've hunted with Stefan and Sophia with Scandinavian Pro Hunters in the past, and possibly will in the future. But what a great operation those two oversee. They take care of every little detail. It is, you walk in and you can forget every care that you ever had about being on a hunt or being someplace when you're with them.
Absolutely, and delightful people and personalities that mesh with a couple of good old Texas boys for certain, don't they, Larry? They're just delightful people.
Yes, sir.
And like you say, we didn't have any hiccups on anything on any time we've hunted with them. They've always been gracious and organized and detailed, and we just enjoyed them and plan to hunt with them again for certain.
They are so special, and if people want to learn more about them, what I'd suggest is Patty Crenette with the Global Sportsman sets up our hunts for us, and I think, as I recall, their website is theglobalsportsman.com, and Patty can provide all kinds of details. They do, talking about Scandinavian Pro Hunters in the past, with a couple of other friends, I've hunted everything from red stag and reindeer, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit in Norway, but roe deer in Sweden, and all kinds of different critters with them in Denmark and Sweden as well too. And I'll be with them here before too very long to do a Three Nations roe deer hunt that Mark and Carol Little bought at the DSC Foundation Gala that they graciously donated Scandinavian Pro Hunters. But they also do lots of different bird hunts. They're in every nation that I think you can hunt in that part of the world, even a little bit in Africa. And they do some tremendous waterfowl and upland game hunts as well too. And you kind of name the species that found in Europe and that part of the world, and they can put you onto those. And great hunts staying in old estates, kind of like what we did, or old castles, and the food is good, and pay attention to every possible detail.
They certainly do. I tell you, I'm looking forward to hunting reindeer in Norway with them in September. So that'll be a unique and interesting hunt too. And want to follow in your footsteps. I saw a picture of the reindeer you killed up there several years ago with them, and it is. I don't know that they make them any wider and bigger than that one, Larry. That's quite an amazing and magnificent trophy of yours.
It truly is. As I'm talking in my office right now, I'm staring up at it right now and bringing back many memories. I was there with Tim Fallon, and you're going over with Bruce Keller, who Bruce have become friends as a result of the hunt that we did in Sweden and in Finland. And I'll tell you what, that is such a fantastic hunt. You'll be hunting on a national park. They drift into the wind, so depending on which way the wind is blowing, is they're drifting into it. But Fallon and I were able to borrow a couple of horses, so I've already planted in Sophia particularly and Stefan's ear that y'all really ought to take a horseback ride while you're there, particularly if you're up on the far end where you got to walk 10, 12 miles to get to where the reindeer are.
I'll need a horse for sure.
John, it was such an absolutely fantastic pleasure spending time with you again out in the field and on the plane and telling stories afterwards. And I can't wait to get with you again here before too very long.
Well, we didn't need to plan another hunt, and I'll talk to Patty about getting us started on something soon, Larry.
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed being with you, and what a great adventure, and thanks for so much information and knowledge. You're a great travel companion.
Well, as are you, and can't wait to look forward. I'm looking forward already to the next one. Now, I understand we're going to cut it off here, but I think you bought a bunch of ammunition to take some grandkids out to y'all's place in far west Texas, and you're going to be doing a little shooting and practicing some of the things you learned from Tim Fallon's crew there on the FTW this coming weekend. So, wish you the best.
Thank you. We will. Those grandsons love to shoot and developed a passion for that. So we're going to put all our good knowledge from FTW to work and do some long-range fun shooting this week at Steele.
I know you will have a great time. John, thank you so very much once again. Look forward to the next opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us around the campfire today. We look forward to seeing you hopefully in July, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th at the DSC Foundation Gala at the Gaylord Texan in Grapevine, Texas. If you want to learn more about that, you can go to the DSC website, which is biggame.org, or the foundation website, which is dscf.org. John, thank you again so very much, and we'll catch up with you around the campfire before too very long.
Thank you, Larry. Take care. God bless.
DSC's Campfires with Larry Weishuhn has also been brought to you by The Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, the Texas Wildlife Association, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.
Monster Energy. Everybody knows White Monster Zero Ultra. That's the OG. It kicked off this whole zero sugar energy drink thing. But Ultra is a whole lineup now. You've got Strawberry Dreams, Blue Hawaiian, Sunrise, and Vice Guava. And they all bring the Monster Energy punch. So if you've been living in the white can, branch out. Ultra's got a flavor for every vibe. And every single one is zero sugar. Tap the banner to learn more.